Hello, my name is Cynthia, and welcome to my Flosstube channel. I'm happy to be here with you today to talk about my stitching, a few previous finishes, a new finish, a new start, and some plans for the month of May. It is May the 1st, 2024, and I'm here on a cloudy day in Fort Worth, Texas. I was reminiscing this morning with my husband about May days when I was growing up. It was kind of a festival at our elementary school for children to weave a maypole and to wear long pastel dresses. And I was chosen to be in this second grade pageant. I remember my grandmother handmade me a long pink dress, and I'll try to insert a picture if I can find it. And we wove the maypole. A lot of people haven't ever heard of that, and so it's just kind of a fun memory for me on the 1st of May. I think of it. And it's also a day for me to start thinking about new plans for stitching. I have a previous finish to show you, so let's go ahead and get started with the stitching. I had recently had this fall out of its frame. My daughter put something up against it and it was just tucked in there, and so I sort of tightened it up in the frame and added some what do they call those things that you put in the darts? They're like metal reinforcements. I can't remember what they're called, but I hammered those in with a screwdriver in the back, so now it's a little more sturdy. But I hadn't shown this in a while, and it is one of my favorites for all year round. It's called Though He Seemeth Sleeping, and it has a beautiful verse reminding us that Christ is with us even when he seemeth sleeping. And I have lots of fond memories of working on this with my friends Becky and Rachel. So we all three did this together. And so I keep it front and center in my TV room. I look at it all the time. But it's mostly called for colors. She gives 3 different color waves, Lucy, beam, and stitches. I'm going to share another picture or another pattern by her in a minute. I think that's why she's on my mind as well. But she gives 3 different color waves, and I just picked from that and looked at the picture. So it was kind of to my liking, but most of those are her called for. Just a couple are changed. So, and I painted this frame. I actually had to add an extra stitch at the top to make it fit into here, and there is a previous Flosstube about that. I'll try to link it in a card if I remember, but I might link it below too. So there's Though He Seemeth Sleeping, and my new finish that I wanted to share with you. I have some other previous finishes, but they're patriotic, so I think I'll wait till next time. I have some mania plans that are patriotic, so I'll pull those out next video. But for today, I did get to finish Antique Birds and Cages by Shakespeare's Peddler. That's Teresa Vanette, also known as the Kitten Stitcher, and her pattern called for, I think, a Gloriana silk. And so I wanted to do it in blue, and that's what I did. I showed the unfinished version of this on Instagram, and I finished it up this morning. It has a little less room than I wanted, but I actually finished it pretty closely to how Teresa did, which turned out funny because I usually use a little more space, but I was really using a tiny scrap of fabric, and the selvage was pretty close over here, so I didn't have a lot of margin on the edges, but I still think you can see everything just fine. I changed this from birds to something that's a little more personal. When I started this during the pandemic, we were in lockdown and we were feeling very caged, very isolated. And sorry, Dahlia's going to interject, as she does if your dog is startled by that, as I am. I wanted to remember that feeling of, even though we are, under lockdown or in the midst of a pandemic, we're still free. And I put an abbreviation that means something to me. Some people think when you put Xmas that it's a derogatory term for Jesus, but it's actually the Greek letter chi, C-H-I. My husband is a Greek professor, or was in the past, and still studies Greek all the time for his preaching. He was an ancient Greek professor, and so that Greek letter means something to me, and it's just free in Christ. And so that way I can remember that even though my circumstances might feel like very impossible or difficult, that I'm just like these birds out of the cage. So I used the antique lace that I showed you the last time I pulled this out, or a couple videos ago, and I was able to find a piece that was almost perfect. It does have a few little pulls in it. I don't think there was one piece left on that entire table runner that had, you know, no flaws. So what I did was I put, I sewed this on, I cut it off at the top. It's not a perfect edge, it's a little bit raw, but that's okay. I sewed it across the top, just onto the finished front of the pillow. And then, I mean, before I sewed the back on next, but before that, I finished it all, stuffed it, and then I put just a little bit of glue, some clear Aleene's tacky glue, or I don't remember if it's Aleene's, but it's just the craft glue, the tacky glue, on a paintbrush. I just kind of lightly went over that so that it doesn't pull farther. It's not super thick or anything, and it's not obvious at all. I did it with a really light hand, but you can feel it when you go over there. There's some tougher spots, kind of like when you used to put clear nail polish on your pantyhose, if you recall. That I didn't want any further runs, so I used the glue, and then I did glue a piece of felt on the back after I sewed the back together. I sew all the way around, and then I split the back, and I used the same fabric that I used on all the other pieces in my bedroom. And I ran out of bulb pins. I've laid them somewhere silly, so I just sewed this on, this button, before I glued it. And there is a brass fish. One of my sweet subscribers sent me a bunch of charms, and that to me represents the another symbol of Jesus, the fish. I think it's called an ichthus. So I thought, oh, that'll work. I was trying to find anything that fit, like a bird or something, but I went ahead and put a fish on the back. So that'll mean something to me, and it does have the bell. So there is my antique birds finish. It looks a little different than I expected, but that's always the fun part. You never know what you're gonna get. It has a little bit of walnut shells in the bottom just for weight. I'm gonna put it in that tier tray by my bed that I am enjoying having very much. So thank you for letting me show that new finish and my previous sampler, and I am going to pull out the pieces I've been working on, really just one and then a new start. So let me get those out, and then I'll talk about my May plans. Thanks. And I think I forgot to say, this is stitched on a scrap from my Hawkhorn Hollow piece. It's a 36 count vintage country mocha. I used one strand of floss because it is a pretty small linen, and I believe this color is 926. I can't remember for sure, but it's just the blue DMC that's kind of a country blue. So it doesn't quite match the back, but it matches the bottom really well, and I liked it. So forgot to mention that. I'm bad about forgetting fabrics, but I wanted to show you my progress on Mary Needleworker. And where is the cover sheet for it? I should have got that out first. I'm sorry. Here it is, Mary Needleworker by Lindy Stitches, Stephanie Webb. This came out at market, I think a couple years ago. A lot of people have already stitched it. It had a day and a night version. And I picked the day version because I really like a soft greeny blue. You can see I always sort of navigate toward that color. And I had a scrap of fabric. Now I'm having a hard time finding it. I thought it was here with, I thought I had it out, but it's still in the back. I got the paper out, but not the pattern. Oh, and my needle's loose. I've been putting the lace at the bottom of the dress, and I kind of skipped down a little bit. I was getting a little bit wearisome of the skirt. So here's the whole thing. It's kind of hard to show, and I'm afraid the light's coming through. It is a mystery linen. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it's a 36 count R&R of some kind. A friend sent it to me. And I was getting kind of tired of all the blue, green rows of stitches. I don't know if you can tell just how many stitches I've done. But I did get past the worker. I think I'm ready to start the next line of text, which will be how does. And so I've made good progress there, but I was just wanting to see more. Somehow I was feeling like this piece was kind of stuck, like I was just never going to get finished with the skirt. So I went ahead and snaked down on the outline of it and started the shoe. You can see that down there. It's kind of a Mary Poppins shoe. And I did the other spools of thread. And I did use, ooh, that one's getting a little bit loose. I might have to redo that one, but I knew that. It's not the worst thing if I have to redo this satin stitching row. I have an ombre, oh, it looks really pretty there. DMC floss that someone had given me. I don't know if I have it marked. It's, is it Moulin? Is that what it's called? I had it, yes, 4440 DMC Moulin. It's just a really pretty ombre floss, and I thought that would be nice for a spool. And there is a trick with satin stitching. You probably already know this, but I think I read it on, or I watched it online when I was looking at embroidery stitches. If you do the stitching on the back in a continuous loop, which you can do, it draws the fabric together tighter. So what I do is I stitch one loop of the satin stitch, and then I come up on the other side and go back and then down and back. And so on the back, instead of wasting all that thread, you've just got one line of stitching. You can see how ugly my backs are. You've just got this one line of stitching instead of, because sometimes when you do the satin, I've seen people do it where it's satin on both sides. But that's a waste of thread to me. So, and it does make the fabric, you have to watch your tension with this stitch because you can make the fabric draw up a little tighter. But these are easier because they're tiny. It's when you get across a bigger expanse that you have to be careful. And the actual pattern calls for crosses. I just always like to do a spool of thread because it's shinier. And I've gone to have some sort of realism with this pattern and using like the metallic threads for the scissors. And so I thought I'd keep kind of in that theme of having things look a little more realistic. I mean, obviously these are very fantastical anyway. We're not going to have, you know, butterflies and frogs and mushrooms around us while we're stitching, but it would be nice. And this is going on my needle worker wall with the other Brenda Gervais needle worker I have. She's got really wide hips and she has spools on her hips. And so this one I think is a nice complement. And I'll show you my May plans. I intend to work a little farther on my needle worker wall. So you can see when that fell down, I was going to remind you, I'm changing this pattern quite a bit from kind of the more, Lindy has or Stephanie Webb has a very specific palette. She likes a lot of greens and teals and kind of brighter colors, and I go for more vintage for the most part. So like I totally changed the flowers from that gray one to kind of a plummy color and peach. And then my mushroom is a little bit darker. I used colors that I like that are a little more prim. So I'm hoping to get a finish on this. I intended to keep going on it, but I am going to add in another needle worker piece that will kind of spur me on, I think, to finish that one because I'll want to start working on that one. That's part of my May plans, and I'll talk about that more in a little bit. But that was my main whip that I worked on other than finishing up. I actually finished up Antique Birds pretty quickly, and what stitching I have done has gone toward Mary Mary and this new start that I was going to show you, just because I've been in a little bit of a slump and I'm finding it really hard. Instead of doing what I've done in years past, which is just not stitch, I thought, okay, well, what sounds good? What is appealing to me? And I did share this pattern last time. I really wanted to stitch this for the last year since Gigi gave it to me via email so kindly. And so I thought, well, why not? I'm really in a blue-greeny mood right now, and I'm wanting to stitch for my bedroom. So I pulled out 3 different fabrics. I want to do what Gigi did and sort of piece it together. I was talking about framing with lace last time, and I'm going to do sort of a collage piece to fit whatever frame I find for this, and kind of piece it together. We are having people walk by my house today at noon on a Tuesday. Hang on just a second. So sorry. She is so loud. It's so hard to film with her around. But anyway, I pulled out 3 different fabrics, and they're sort of strange. I pulled out this piece of banding. It's actually a 24 count, that's backwards, 24 count linen banding, but I really liked that lace kind of detail at the top and bottom. So I'm going to put this along the bottom, sort of like Gigi did. It's a different fabric. And then I had to start twice to make sure it was in the center of that banding, since I'm going to kind of top stitch this onto what I stitched with the bird and the border. So I had to move it once. I started too high. This will put it in the middle so that Grace is extended across. This is going to be pretty large lettering. Gigi advised using similar counts on your 3 separate linens so that they are, you know, in scale, but this piece is going to be bigger and I'm not sure how that's going to work exactly. But I'm using a smaller count over here. So I think I can make this a little bit shorter and have Grace go farther across. We'll see. Like I said, I can piece in another piece of fabric if I want to. If I want to put in another piece of lace in the middle or something else, I will do that. The main thing I worked on though is that bird. And this linen is a 37 count Russian tea biscuit, I believe it's called, by, I believe it is Legacy Linen. It's been a while since I had this linen. I figured it out as I was working on it. I was like, Russian tea cake. Did I say that? Russian tea cake. I was like, why do I have this linen? I bought it for a gift that I made for an exchange. And I wanted it to be about 36 and kind of a creamy linen. And I just wanted to try this linen. I like it. I have another piece that I'm using that's large. I want to say they come in odd counts. Instead of like 36, it's 37. And I can't remember what the count I'm using for. It might be 37 as well, or 38. Just like I said, odd counts. And I am having just a touch of trouble. You can see where I've kind of stopped right there. I was stitching that last night and I got to a slub in the linen and it wasn't lining up. I'm making those little, you know, holes in the bird where it has the kind of dots there. And it wasn't lining up, and I realized I had gone over 3 because there's like a hair-like thread within that linen. It happens with most linens, I suppose. I don't think you can have it perfect, but it just so happened that it was right past a slub, but I could tell pretty quickly that things weren't lining up. And I also appreciate these kind of patterns because it does give you a little bit of leeway. Everything doesn't have to be super perfect. But I love those, are those called penny rounds? Or I guess it's kind of a play off of that. I love those loops at the top. I made a mistake and I've kind of committed now. This is the end of the piece. The star is like the edge. I wanted the border to be, her called for color is molasses. And I wanted it to look sort of variegated like that. I like a border to be variegated. And so I was threading, or I think they call it, oh gosh, now it's gone, tweeding, or, you know, blending a black and a orangey brown, kind of like a tortoiseshell cat. That's what it reminds me of. It reminds me of my cat Roxy. But it's a 37 count and I'm using 2 strands, and so it is bulky. It's a lot like my Hawk Run Hollow. It's not impossible, but it's not my favorite. So I wouldn't do that. I'd have been more patient and ordered the variegated dark brown. I just didn't have anything that reminded me of what she called for, the molasses. So I thought, well, let me just make it, which usually will be fine. But if I'm, to be honest, this linen feels tighter than a 37. It feels more like a 40. And here I am trying to do 2 strands. So it's a little bit bumpy. You can see it's not perfect. I'm having to keep my tension as loose as I can. But I do like the color. And I've, like I said, kind of committed now. So I don't want to pull all that out. Those stitches, there are more there than they look like because it's almost 40 count. This would be quite a bit larger on a 28 or 32 count piece of fabric. But the colors I'm choosing, I didn't have any of the ones that Gigi called for. So I have a piece of paper here, and I can share it again as I continue to show the bird. Oh, here it is right in front of me. Here are my colors. I don't know if you can screenshot that if you're interested, but there are more kind of teal colors. I have Teal Frost, which is a little bit darker, I think, than Gigi's Choice. And that star is a, it's called Nutcracker by Wicked Stepmother. I use what I have, so. And I didn't have any of them, like I said. That's a Gentle Arts thread. I think it's called Tea Leaves, or, yeah, I think that's right. So lots of just kind of similar tones, but not quite the same. Mine's not going to be quite as pink, I don't think, as Gigi's. It's going to be a little more terracotta. But I love it either way. It's so pretty. So I want to continue to work on that a little more over the next... Actually, it's going to be at the last half of the month, but I will come back to that. It's probably going to replace my red Fractor Bird, which is sort of similar, but I'm feeling this one more right now. So let me put that away, and I'll get out my Mania plants. And then I had one question that sort of sparked this thought in my head. One of my viewers asked, what do you do when you feel discouraged about a piece or when you feel stuck? And to be honest, sometimes I just put it aside for a while. I have quit a piece completely and decided to restart it if I'm just realizing it's just not working. I know some of the larger antique samplers that I felt like would be heirloom pieces, I scrapped because I just was not happy with how it was going to look, and I didn't want to put so many hundreds of hours in a giant sampler if I didn't like the fabric or if I didn't like working on it. So I've had some restarts on a few older samplers, but on smaller pieces, a lot of times I just set them aside, and I know that can get kind of too overwhelming for some people. So just kind of take it for what you can handle. If too many pieces stress you out, then that may not be a good answer. But for me, which was the question, what do I do? Sometimes I have in my mind, I have this series that I'm working on, like I'll have a bird wall. And so if the bird piece I'm working on is getting pretty far into it, maybe 50% to 75% done, but I'm getting stalled out, I'll go ahead and pick the next bird piece and start it. And sometimes that spurs me on to say, well, I really want to work on that new piece, so let me finish this off. It's kind of like putting the carrot before, as I was saying, I sort of give myself the carrot too soon, maybe let myself have the carrot, but that I'm hanging out there. But it's just a hobby. There's no cross stitch, please. So if that works for me and I've already got the project, I've already got it kitted up, or I've got most of the things I need for it, then I don't see the harm in starting it a little bit ahead of time. I don't let that go too far ahead, though. Like I could have a chain of 2 or 3 pieces I want on the wall, and if I have all of them going at once, that can get, a little bit overwhelming. So mostly if I get to like the 50 or 70% mark, that's when I let myself start the next one in the series if I'm having trouble, if I'm getting stalled out. So that was my May plan here. I had sort of had the fever with Market to purchase some new patterns, and I've looked at all that I have and I'm realizing I already have that. Like I'll look at a piece and say, oh, that's such a cute lemon piece, and I was like, oh, I already have a lemon for me to work on. Or, oh, I really love this strawberry piece on Etsy, and I see I already have a strawberry pattern. So some of that is me reminding myself that I already have what I need. I don't need to buy more stuff. Not that I don't want to support designers, but I need to finish what I have first. So in that vein, I'm going to do a sort of mania where I work on a goal for a project. For instance, on this Hollyberry farm, I want to get the top border done with the blueberries, and I haven't even started it. So I'm at the top on this side, and I showed you this a couple weeks ago that it was in my mind, but I haven't pulled it back out. So what I'm going to do is over the next 3 days or so, I'm going to work this border across, and then kind of as a reward for finishing that top, I always have a big farm going, and I want to work in the season. So this is my spring Hollyberry. I'm not going to get that done this year, but if I get that border done, that would be a big piece of it for me, or at least a big mental block for me to get past. I've wanted to start the what I think of as my summer farm for a couple of years now. I think I bought this 2 years ago. So, and I have, I think, a piece of fabric that is going to be big enough for it. I'm actually going to do it on a blue-gray fabric because that house, I don't like the way it shows up on this linen. And I just really wanted it to be a little cooler with those patriotic colors. So I'm going to try to work it with a piece of blue linen I have. If that doesn't work, I might have to purchase a piece of linen that's big enough, or I might have to do a Aida, which I can work on Aida as long as it's soft. For this big of a piece, I don't want to have a stiff Aida. So we'll see, but I'm sure you've seen this piece before. It's by Plum Street Sampler, Liberty's Welcome. I finished that large farm. Well, it's not super large. I finished the smaller farm by Brenda Gervais, so I'm allowing myself to kind of put that in the summer place for my farms. And I'm not going to change a single thing about it. I might switch up the colors a little bit. I'm not doing it in the NPI silk. I'm going to use DMC or hand dyes that I have, but I really want to get started on that border, which is one of my favorite parts of it. So if I finish my Hollyberry border, I'm just going to allow myself to pull this out and start that. I also want to work on, maybe during the morning, some of these smalls that I have. Again, I wanted to purchase some patriotic pieces, and I realized I have these freebies, and I wanted to show them to you as well because they're so pretty. This is on the Sub Rosa blog. I don't see a website listed here, but it's Sub Rosa Patriotic Strawberry. If you Google it, I bet it will pull up. Her blog, I believe, is in Italian, so it can be a little bit tricksy to get around. Am I wrong? It might be another one I looked at the other day that was in another language. I don't believe it's in English, but you can have it translated and still find it. So that piece I think is so pretty. I want to do it on kind of a tannish colored. I have this taupe colored Aida. I think it's like a 16 or 18 count. I think the whites would show up really pretty on that and make a nice strawberry. So I want to work on that just to give myself a little bit of reward. These large farms, you just work and don't feel like it's ever going to be done. But with these smaller pieces, it's gratifying. So, and like I said, I have more patriotic pieces to show you, but I like to look at what I have each year too. Like I'd looked at a little Uncle Sam that Not Forgotten Farm did that's so cute, and I might still do it, but I already have an Uncle Sam that I did last year. And then I looked at a crow and I was like, I already have a crow. So I'm trying to be more diverse. And this one has little white birds that I think look pretty. This one also came on her blog, and I couldn't find a good printout of this. The pad is really small, and the grid is even kind of difficult to see. So I might have to either blow that up on my phone or something, but she put a couple on this page. There's another berry and this pretty heart, and it says Sweet Land of Liberty on that lady. So you might be able to find a better copy of this. I don't know. I think I just cut and paste it from the Sub Rosa blog, but she's so talented. So I want to work on those small pieces and see what I can get done. The other goal I have is to finish Mary Mary's skirt. And if I can get that and the lace done, then I'm going to allow myself to do the next one in the series, which is another Lucy Beam. I showed you the Lucy. This is one I bought, goodness, several years ago. And I think it's so funny. It came out at Market. I Will Cut You. My grandma used to be both grandmas were very protective of their sewing scissors. And so I'm pretty sure it was my mom's mom that was so sassy. She would say something like this, I'll cut you. So I'm going to try to do this piece. I don't know if I have the fabric for it. It's pretty long and skinny. On 30 count, it's 25.5 inches across. And that would leave a very small margin. So I don't know if I have the fabric. I might use an Aida because I didn't have a scrap. And it's such a narrow piece, or wide and not very tall. So 5 inches high, 21 inches wide on 30 count. Love it though. So I want to get that started. If I finish Mary Mary, that's in the second week. And I also want to start, after I Will Cut You, I want to work on this piece by Heartstring Samplery, the Cross Stitch Nation. I'm not going to put Cross Stitch Nation on it though. I'm going to put something about a thread that binds, or a thread that sews this together. And I'm going to put family members on here because the way it worked out was so perfect. I want to put my great grandmother Molly here, then her daughter Helen, my grandma, and my dad, who learned to sew from his mom Helen. He's a parachute rigger and he sews wonderfully. I'm actually going to put him in a military uniform though, in a camouflage suit, because he was in the Air National Guard and in the Navy. and then I'm going to be the one in the middle, and then I have 3 daughters. So it was just a perfect chain for it to be great-grandmother, grandmother, my dad, and then me, and then my 3 daughters. So I'm going to kind of pick their favorite colors and stitch that. I have a bunch of threads that I've actually put aside from Victorian Motto. I planned to do this, like I said, several years ago. So I want to use this time in May, not necessarily a mania, but to start some things that have been ideas in my mind that I want to alter, and that it'll be so fun to see come to fruition, but not until I start them. So if I meet those goals, then I'll do that one. And I also have this pretty sweet strawberries. I wanted to show this one. It's from, I'll try to put this below. It's cosmichandmade.com, and I was gonna buy a strawberry pattern online on Etsy, and I remembered I have this one. So I want a collection of strawberry patterns that I'm gonna put in my kitchen window. So I'm gonna get started on that one, and I might still purchase that other one, but I have so many patterns to stitch. I don't need to buy anything else. I just need to stitch what I have. So on that note, I hope that you are having a good stitching month, that you're feeling creative and inspired. I thank you for spending your time with me, for all the encouragement that you give me, for all the kind comments. I just continue to do this. I realized in February was my 5th year anniversary, and I continue to do this because it's just such a blessing, and I hope that my time blesses you as well. As I say at the end of all my videos, in the book of Psalms chapter 90 verse 17, it says, "May the favor of the Lord our God be upon us and establish the work of our hands." Thanks for watching.